In this series you will see great magical fights without rules and restrictions. A confrontation of magical magic and physical human strength. Which will prove stronger, spells, wands, and innate abilities? Or hard work, patience, endurance, and physical strength? You can only find out if you watch this video. So take a seat, because we're off to the cruel and beautiful world of magic and brawn. Today we are going to dive into the amazing world of magic. It's a place where magic is a common thing that everyone has. You can do all sorts of things with it, and no one will pay much attention to it. Because it's a common thing. You can create something with magic, create, work, rest, and just live a magical fairy tale. But in one dense forest, there lives a man who is completely different from all the inhabitants of this wonderful magical world. What kind of person he is and why he is so different, you and I will find out in this clip. In the same forest, in a small house, lives a fairly old man Regro. During his life, he has learned and gained a lot of experience. And now retired, so to speak, he can finally devote time to himself and his son Mesh. His son was strong enough physically, but mentally a little behind. Regro was, like all the settlers of the wondrous magical world, endowed with magical powers that he could freely dispose of. But apparently magic is not hereditary, and as it happened, Mash, his son, did not inherit any powers. He was an ordinary man in our world, but not ordinary in the world where everyone has magic. What do you want to be? Ignore, drunk policeman. Like and subscribe, tough guy. So his father could only teach him his physical abilities. That is why Mash was very well developed in body. When his father would leave home and go about his business, his son was forbidden to go out of the house and go to town. But as they say, forbidden fruit is sweet, so the obedient son disobeyed his father's request and ran through the woods into town. He wanted to try something tasty. And that tasty thing was in the city. There were mages everywhere, doing whatever they could with their powers. This annoyed Mash a little. After all, you could do all these actions with your own hands. In that world where magic could do anything, people were more surprised by a guy's physical strength and power. Suddenly the unexpected happened. The wind blew and pulled the hood of the cloak off Mash. Then many gawkers gathered in the square, who saw that the guy had no magic markings. Which means he's not like them. It's like any infrastructure. This town has its own guards, a kind of police force. In the form of a man with a scar under his left eye. He didn't like his job very much and had to work at it just for the money. He also hated people who broke the law and did whatever they wanted. After all, he had to work harder because of them. It was a vicious circle. And then he got word that a man had been seen in the square without a tag. And that was not good. The unsuspecting Mash was just continuing on his walk, eating a delicious meal. That's when some uniformed man got in his way and bumped into him and got his jacket dirty. But Mash was more concerned about breaking his brownie. This man turned out to be a drunken member of the magical police force. From his little monologue, we can understand that the police aren't paid much here. And that's why what they are paid is what they do. The conflict escalated into something bigger. The policeman starts hitting on the guy, telling him that he got his uniform dirty and now he has to do something about it, make amends somehow. Without thinking long, Mash tore the cop's clothes off, tearing them to shreds. He tried to resolve the situation, but only made it worse. People gathered to watch the circus, as did the scarred cop, Brad. He immediately recognized the tagged intruder in the guy. But his father immediately grabbed him and they ran away. Brad couldn't let them go so easily, so he sent his magic birds after them. Mash got beaten up by his father. Of course he disobeyed him, and that's what it got him. Dad punished him with more exercise. At least it would do him some good. Dad knew the magical police wouldn't let the family off the hook that easily. And he was right. Immediately 3 policemen, led by Brad, broke into the house. At this time Mash was exercising. He quickly completed his exercise and returned home. Near the door, he overheard a conversation between the police and his dad. The policeman grabbed his father and explained to him that people who had no powers had no right to exist in their world. He also charged him that he too was now breaking the law by hiding a criminal from justice. But his father would never give up his own. The man recalled words from the past: though he had magic, he had no talents or abilities. His whole entourage thought he wasn't needed, he was a mistake, he shouldn't have been born. It had been weighing on him from birth and depressing him terribly. It was as if no one around him noticed his misery and continued to lash out at the guy, repeatedly rebuking him for his own helplessness. It all destroyed the last faith he had in his own strength. He used to think that maybe he could do it, that he could prove what he was capable of. But with each passing day, he became more and more convinced of his worthlessness. When his last hopes collapsed, he realized he didn't want to take it anymore. And since there was nothing he could do, he would just have to quit. Maybe if he disappeared, it would get better. Actually, it wouldn't, nothing would change. Everything will be the same. Just one unnecessary element would disappear from the world. And he was fine with that. On a dark night, he climbed to the roof of a building and was ready for the fateful, last jump of his life. He had made up his mind. The wind blew his hair, the height was enormous, the bottom line was one. And just when he was ready to commit suicide, an infant cry was heard behind him. It was Mash. The guy went over to the source of the noise to make sure he wasn't imagining things. The man immediately noticed that the baby was different, but it looked so much like him. Then, for the first time, he felt someone he needed and vowed to be a real family to this child. He tried to warn the boy of the dangers, for which he was badly beaten. And they wanted to kill the old man, but his son Mash intervened. He wouldn't let some idiot hurt his family. The guy challenged the magical police to what they only laughed at. They underestimated their opponent. After all, Brad had been on special assignment before. He used his strongest trick he had ever used to destroy a dragon, but it didn't work on the guy. The warden decided not to give up and used all his energy. But any of his antics were put out by the mouse with his usual 2 hands. It was unbelievable that such a thing could not happen. After that, he decided to try to do something with the wand. But not with magical properties, but with his physical strength. He easily broke the magical shield of the policeman and wounded him. It was only a warning. Then, seeing the potential in the boy, the policeman decided to make a deal with him. He suggested that Mash enroll in a magical school and take a test to become the chosen one. Then, if Mash was chosen by the gods, all the wealth he would get would go to the policeman as well. If he refuses, then his family will be imprisoned. What will he choose, to spend his life on the run or play by the authorities' rules? For the sake of his father, for the sake of a peaceful life, the guy agreed to the deal. Disguised as an ordinary man with magic, he decided to enroll in a magic school. Just like that, an ordinary foray into the store turned his whole life upside down. But in what direction? Will he be able to become a cool magician? Will he be able to hide his secrets, or will he be found out quickly and fail? Today you can visit an elite magic school, where gifted children from all over the world dream of entering. You will see the most difficult entrance exams, which will test the fortitude, and determination of the applicants. But will our hero be able to pass such difficult tests, not having magical powers? That's what we are about to find out. Enjoy watching. In the magical world there is no less magical school. It is the most elite school of all, because the graduates get a chance to become the best of the best magicians. That's why it is very difficult to enter this school and only selected mages can pass the entrance exams. Truly talented and clever students. In order to compete with others in magical power and to enter the elite school of magic, hundreds of children from all over the world came. One of the teachers, as usual, was watching the future students through the window. His attention, of course, was drawn to our character. Mash did not behave like the others. He was practicing and reading textbooks not on magic as everyone else did, but on physical exercise. Even though the guy had no magical powers, he was sure he could pass the exam. After all, he was strong enough. all the more reason for him to have his mark forged. So he was indistinguishable from other students like him. But all the same, some excitement was present even for him. After all, not just his place in life, but the fate of his entire family depended on this exam. The most important and disturbing thing was that the life of his father, who was now with Brad, depended on the result. If he manages to pass the entrance exams, he will be able to prove along with it that there is a place in the world of magic for those who do not possess it. And all the magical stuff can be done in-house. That's where the man who will lead the entrance exams, Claude Lucci, is the best of the best magicians. He was also very selfish. And so begins the first exam. Who are you going to dream about tonight? Ignore, nasty professor. Like and subscribe, sweet lemon. Out of the ground appeared the racks on which lay the sheets and pens for the written work. Only 3% of those present would be able to pass the exams. The kids had 30 minutes to do everything. The tests were difficult. They were bewitched, and it was very hard to make out what was written on the paper because the letters were running all over it. You have to dispel the spells to stop the letters and make the text out of them. But how would Mash do that? It's simple. Every creature, even a magical one, has a sense of self-preservation. Seeing our boy's strength, the letters themselves rose in line to stay intact. And that was only the first exam. He passed all the others just as easily and perfectly. Amazingly, he managed to outperform the students who possessed magic. The teacher saw this boy's success as a personal challenge. He had an obligation to stop him and prove that magic exams are not that easy. Immediately out of the ground grew a maze that surrounded all the participating students with high walls. It had to be passed. Naturally, this labyrinth, like all the other tests in these exams, was enchanted. It was full of various traps, monsters, and other nasties that the teachers had prepared for them. Only 30 minutes were allotted to complete this test. Mash had already begun to think of a plan of action when suddenly a girl named Lemon ran up to him. She offered to cooperate with him, explaining that together they would cope faster. He accepted the offer, and already seemed to regret his choice. She was the only one trapped. And Mash, as her cool partner, had to save her. But when the guy decided to speed up, the girl shackled him. She said she tricked him and she couldn't let him through. The shackles couldn't stop this tough guy. He broke free and ran away. And a huge pharaoh appeared from behind the girl and started asking her riddles. He ripped the wand out of the girl's hands, so she couldn't use her magical powers, and she didn't have time to use her mental powers. Here she had already prepared for defeat, as she was saved by our hero. The girl realized what a stupid thing she had done and that she shouldn't miss a guy like that. She apologized to him, hoping for forgiveness. And she was lucky. His kindness did not allow him to leave the girl in trouble. He understood her and forgave her. Time was almost up, so how was he going to make it to the exit? They could not go around the maze, so Mash decided to act his usual way, to go ahead. Many students considered this action to be cheating. A labyrinth is a puzzle. You have to go between the walls, not through them. And one of the main rules of exams is to follow the rules. But as stated earlier, our hero is a bit dumb for this world, but also very smart. After all, everything that is not forbidden is allowed. Then the girl confessed that Professor Luce had asked her to frame the guy. It so happened that the girl was from a poor family, so she needed money badly. With this, the professor hooked her. When he was discovered, he just started calling the students names and humiliating them. He challenged them and told them that they would only go on through him. The professor had already prepared for the battle and introduced the fiasco to the students. At the same moment, Mash just walked up and broke the professor's wand, shocking him. How could a little kid like this boy defeat the professor himself? After seeing all the chaos that was going on in the exams, the headmaster himself showed up. Now he will lead the exam. The next test is the final interview. The first one to take it was our hero. He was asked several questions. Like, why do you want to come to our school? Why did you help a girl on the test? His simple answers really tickled the principal. He told me that he is always in favor of justice, kindness, and honesty. But he said if anyone ever got in his way, he would sweep him away with his strength. Sure, the guy is strong. But what if one day he has to face more than just walls in a maze? A battle with the headmaster, for example. The principal has an ability. He can create a huge voodoo doll and place in it the souls of the closest people of whoever he is going to torture. He won't torture the person directly, he'll torture the souls of their nearest and dearest. So he placed the soul of the boy's father inside the doll. In attempting to destroy this weapon, the boy only shattered his fist. This is the first time he failed to destroy something with physical force. But he wasn't used to giving up so easily. Especially when it comes to his family. No one can cause pain or suffering to his closest, only human being. So he decided to test his stamina. The headmaster saw the nobility in him. He realized that this guy would definitely not come to the side of evil and would always stand up for good. Therefore, he deserved to be a student of this elite school. And so the first step is behind him. He's enrolled in the school. In magic classes he also solved everything with physical force. In a bit of a roundabout way, he performed all the assignments. But the important thing was that he did them, and the rest didn't matter. I couldn't argue with that. Everybody saw something strange in him, but nobody could figure out what it was. The school was like the internet, so the students lived there. Finn hoped to the end that his roommate would be anyone but this strange newcomer. But he was out of luck and his roommate was Mash. Well, in principle, they got along quickly and found common ground. In order to become the best and get the main title you need to collect gold coins for success. Depending on your grades you can get a silver bronze, you can get a gold coin. But if you don't maintain your grades, you can be expelled at any time. Yeah, it's not an easy task, but we've been through worse. Today you'll see the school bullies and the main character fighting for leadership in the academy. Will Mash manage to outwit the educational system and become the best magician without magic? Will he defeat the school's main bully, and how will he do it? And that's what we're about to find out. Learning at the School of Magic without magic continues. Mash has already settled in the dormitory and got along well with his roommate. They've helped each other out more than once in difficult situations. So today he asked his friend for help again. The boy accidentally mixed up a broom and a burdock. So his magical friend helped him and lent him his broom instead of that burdock. With tricks like this, Mash was able to fool the educational system. The boys had a broom flying lesson today. He had to wave his wand and ask the broom to fly. Of course, you had to put all your magic power into that magic word. Even young mages didn't make it that easy. But Mash had no intention of giving up, he had to be the best. For his father's sake he had to do it. Copying the tactics from his classmates, he didn't have much success in making the broom fly, from the word go. Quickly realizing that without magic power he wouldn't be able to lift it so easily. He decided to resort to physical force again. He could lift the broom, but how could he fly it? I think we have a problem. A classmate suggested a competition for his friends. A broom race. Whoever is last to fly will do whatever his classmates tell him to do for the rest of the day. The race does not involve the whole class, but only two. Mash and his classmate, who has something against him. This guy had long ago learned how to fly a broomstick and was pretty good with it. So he was sure of his victory, unlike Mash. Ready, set, go. Before anyone knew it, Mash was on the finish line. Everyone was shocked by his phenomenal speed. Who will win? Ignore Lloyd. Like and subscribe, Mash. Not only did he win the event, but he broke the world record. How did he do that? Let me remind you, he has no magic. It's simple, he threw a broom, caught it in flight and sat down. In this way, he created the illusion of himself flying on a broom. A disappointed classmate had already begun accusing Mash of cheating. The guy couldn't accept his defeat, because that's not how magic works. He had already begun to arise and lash out at Mash. He said he would take pity on his opponent and give up the privilege of using him all day. This made the guy even angrier, but he was stopped in time by his friend, by sewing his mouth shut with magic. The friend who started the conversation with Mash turned out to be Lois Cavil, a kind of tough guy who had now spotted our hero and decided to get to know him better. The guys knew where this was going. Lloyd never just talks to anyone. Something really interesting, perhaps even scary, was about to happen. After all, Lloyd's plans are particularly elaborate. Their conversation was interrupted by the teacher, so Lloyd simply invited Mash over for a chat after class. He said yes, and they parted peacefully for class. This Lloyd wasn't so easy. He was the local bully or elite. He had his own gang of guys, and the classmate who lost to Mash was a member of their team. He lost and embarrassed their clan, so he got punished in the backyard of the school. Lloyd brutally beat a fellow classmate for such an oversight. So who was this strange bandit? Mash asked his neighbor about the guy, and he told him he was the son of a high-ranking mage. They say if you cross him, you're instantly expelled. That's how he deals with his victims. And now Mash is his target. His family is very good friends with the deputy director. That's why it's so easy for him to do it. Alright, the worries will have to wait, but in the meantime you can bake cream cakes. At this time Lloyd and the boys were waiting for him on the school field, whom he had completely forgotten about. The guy walks up to Mash and offers to help him. He knows that Mash wants to become a divine conductor, so he will help him. But in return, he has to do what the bully says. Become, so to speak, his bitch. Well, it's not the first time Mash has done some dirty work, so he'll easily help with dragging textbooks and briefcases. Soon, Lloyd started to bully the kid altogether. They started getting his friend Finn to mess with his stuff. He was weaker than they were, so he did whatever they told him to do. But one day he refused an order, for which he instantly paid the price. Down the hallway Mash heard strange noises. And then he saw Lloyd taunting his friend. That's the kind of thing a guy can't forgive anyone. Finn confessed to the guy that he had been messing with his textbooks the whole time. But hearing kind words from his neighbor, he couldn't do it anymore. So he resisted the bully. His words were filled with sincerity and apology. Finn really hoped that Mash would understand him and forgive him. The boy's tears did not go unnoticed. His words penetrated Mash's heart. He saw again the injustice of this world and how the strong hurt the weak. No more tolerating it. He had been bullying the bullies for a very long time. But he wasn't going to let it go that easily. He walked up to the bully and threw his head against the floor. No one expected that. But now he could be expelled. The deputy principal saw the whole situation. He started sassing the kid, so Mash hit him, too. Then he buried him in the ground. He threatened the principal and soon found himself with the head wizard at the school. The higher education organization decided to expel the boy from that school, because he was socially dangerous. But the principal knew how lousy this Lloyd and the vice principal were. So he was on the boy's side and kept him in school. He wanted Mash to be the best. After confirming that wish, the principal told him how that could be achieved. He should collect coins for successful training. We have already heard that there are 3 types of coins: gold, silver, and bronze. Which coin he gets depends on the type of task. During the briefing, Mash flew off a bit into his world. But most importantly, he realized that he needed to collect more coins. The guy managed to get away with this misdemeanor. Many at the academy approved of his actions, and he was now hailed as a local hero. No one had ever managed to stop Lloyd and the vice principal in his long years of teaching. Thanks to his decision, he gained respect from students and even some teachers. This should help in moving towards the cherished goal. The guy's main hobby remained making cream cakes. It is an interesting activity, and the result is very tasty. He taught the recipe to his neighbor. That's when Tom met them in the hallway. He was the best player in dueling, the local sports game. All the girls at school were crazy about him. He invited Mash to join his team. Dueling is the sport of flying brooms. The match is tomorrow, so there's no time to explain. Tom has seen how well the kid flies his broom during class. So he's obligated to play for their team tomorrow. The day of the match came. Mash was dragged into the team, and all anyone hoped for was him. He tried to explain to the guys that he couldn't fly a broom. But no one heard him. The competition began. Silver coins would be given to the winners of the game. Everyone soared into the air, and the crowd cheered, but Mash remained standing on the ground. People interpreted this as an unwillingness to play and pelted Mash with insults. In this episode you will see an incredible game of ball on real flying brooms. An epic duel between the Academy's strongest students. Mash is challenged to this duel by one of the powerful student mages. He also wants to be the first in the school, but our hero crossed his path. Will Mash be able to endure his opponent's crushing blows and win the battle? Or will he have to kiss his mage's title goodbye forever? Mash was accepted on a sports team for the game, the essence of which was ball and broom flying. Except there was one little problem: the guy didn't have the magical powers to fly. The audience was not thrilled with this development. They came to watch an interesting game, not to see teammates just standing around. Especially the legendary Mash, who showed a phenomenal ability to fly a broomstick. Then the team captain decides to take matters into his own hands. He should set the guy up to win, to get some action. Except Mash wasn't exactly enthusiastic about it all. He'd warned the captain more than once about being a bad broom flyer, but he wouldn't listen. So what could he possibly have to complain about now? But the hyperactive captain again did not hear his classmates' words. Then the boy in charge of the team decided to explain the rules to him. Maybe it's all because he just doesn't know the rules. They consist of simply flying on a broomstick and scooping the ball into the other team's ring. What will you choose? Ignore, go to school or work. Like and subscribe to watch anime all day. The captain, as best he could, tries to set Mash up for the game. The other team was starting to win. They eliminated the captain and are now scoring one goal after another. This is already a problem. This hasn't happened in a long time. The lead in points was huge. The captain hurt his hand and couldn't continue the game. He tried to tell Mash that even if they didn't win, it wasn't winning that mattered, it was participating. The way he put in this game, the way he played, what he was willing to give for his team. Seeing the deplorable nature of the situation, the guy couldn't stay away. It was time to act, something had to be done. So he pushed himself off the ground and soared into the air. No, he didn't suddenly have magical powers, he just started waving his legs like a fan while staying in the air. Not only did he soar into the air, he intercepted the ball and threw it right into the enemy goal. It was a legendary shot, so powerful and strong. How did he do it? Because he was a tremendous distance from the ring. But nevertheless he swung and threw and got a point for his team. But it still wasn't enough, they couldn't beat the other team, they had too big of a lead in points. And there wasn't much time left in the game. Suddenly, something unnatural began to happen in the air. Everyone looked up and saw the ball boomerang its way back into Mash's hands. They seemed to have a new favorite in the game. Maybe Mash had been dormant all this time to build up all that energy and just tear up the stadium. After just a little while, he didn't just outscore his opponents. He scored as many points as anyone had ever scored in the history of the game. With that, the Reds team set a record for points. They beat their opponents and won the competition. Of course, the teachers appreciated such efforts, and the entire team received a silver coin each. Coins were not round like we all imagined, but triangular or diamond-shaped. After the game, the captain came up and thanked the kid from the bottom of his heart for giving so much in the game. He didn't expect him to show all his abilities so much. He really was very grateful to him, because if it wasn't for him, they would have lost. Not only that, but the whole academy was now talking about it. Our newly minted apprentice was also featured on the local news. Of course, such events are rare. One of the students saw the news and realized that he was a true competitor. Only he is supposed to be the best, and here someone takes his place. It is necessary to remove him somehow, because he is a nuisance. The next day the guy became a real attention magnet. The captain wanted to get him on his team and lure him to practice. and Lemon tried to insist that he study. But the boy wanted neither, he just wanted to sit in silence. Then Lance walked into the classroom. It was the same student Mash had crossed paths with before he knew it. He was said to be the first in the entrance exams. He was unusual not only in his mental abilities, but also in his looks. Many girls were crazy about him. He suggested to our guys that we have some fun. He took out a bottle that suddenly sucked Mash's friends into. He explained that it was a flask, a magical artifact that was designed to trap people. He said he would give his friends back if Mash came to meet him in the woods. It was a strange offer, but there was nothing to do, so the guy agreed. In the woods he showed he had some coins, not only that, but his magic abilities were on point. One-liners are magicians with one magical mark. Such people make up a larger population on the planet. However, there are also those who have more than one line, too linear. These people are very rare, they are like exceptions to the rule. However, they are very talented and use magic to the best of their ability. Lance proposed a magic duel to Mash. Since such duels were forbidden on academy grounds, he summoned him to the woods to do so. The guy couldn't refuse since his opponent was blackmailing him with his friends in a bottle. Despite his friend's warning, Mash agreed to duel with Lance. For more convenience, Lance took out his wand and made a veritable battleground. With a single spell, he scorched a huge area of the forest, clearing space. Mash didn't stall long and rushed into battle. With his wand, Lance quickly brought the boy back from heaven to earth, literally. With his will in his fist, Mash tried to resist the magic. He pulled the roots out of the ground and escaped the trap of gravity. The battle takes a new turn, now one spell won't overpower the guy. During the battle, Lance's pendant, which had a loli inside, broke off. But luckily it wasn't that bad, it was just his sister. Lance decided to start a conversation on a philosophical topic and asked his classmate, "What is the most important treasure in this world?" The boy could not find the right answer. It turned out to be Lance's sister, which sounds creepy. The thing is, for his little sister's sake, he's willing to become the meanest villain. He loved her as much as she loved him. As a child, an irreparable thing happened. Anna fell ill with an incurable disease that made her magic mark, and with it, her powers, disappear. And if this happened, the girl must be surrendered to the state, as she no longer has the right to live in this society. Such a decision Lance could not make and vowed to become the best of the best to save his sister. He threw the flask, which had Mash's friends inside, off the cliff. The boy showed all his might and ran down the slope, grabbed the bottle, and came back up. Mash offered a draw, he cracked Lance, the bottle was actually empty. The guy saw himself in Mash, they sure looked something alike. Both pretended to be what they really weren't, for the sake of family. Mash was pretending to be a mage, for his father's sake, and Lance was a villain, for his little sisters. The only thing they had in common was the genuine goodness in their hearts. They were ready to give everything they had for the sake of the people closest to them. Who knows, maybe Lance and Mash will even become friends someday. In this series, you will be part of a rivalry between the casts of the Magical Academy. You will see the school's most dangerous and talented students challenging Mash. Will he be able to stand up to his enemies with no advantage in magic? Or will he have to say goodbye to his place at the academy this time? There are several dormitories at the academy. 3, to be exact. Students are not just assigned to them, but according to certain categories and criteria. Adler, in this hostel live brave and confident individuals. Forda, students who live there are endowed with wisdom and determination. Land, the most talented students of the academy are settled there. There is always a rivalry between these castes. They see each other as competitors, as each group of students wants to be the best. Their main goal is to prove that it is their skills that are special and unusual. So at every class, students from different groups compete with each other for the right to be the best of the best in the academy. Mash and Phil end up in the Adler dormitory. As a reminder, the bravest and most confident individuals live there. There is an unusual silence in the guy's room today. No business for the day, so the guys just sit around and drink tea. Their conversations are once again about coins and how to be the best of the best in this academy. They have to collect some silver coins to exchange for gold coins. The coins, by the way, are amazingly shaped, as, indeed, is everything around them. The fact that there's nothing to do today makes it even a little boring. There's no need to rush to argue or win anything. It's a beautiful day outside. As wonderful as the tea the classmates are drinking. It's a beautiful day. Who will win? Ignore, Silva Iron. Like and subscribe. Bray. Stop. I think they forgot something. That's right, Phil remembered. They didn't do their potions homework. If they don't do it, they'll be expelled and kicked out of the academy right away. It was the most important homework they had. And they completely forgot about it. How awful. What a nightmare. What should we do? We've got to do it now. To ease Phil's panic, Mash offered him a piece of cake. But why not? Brownies always smooth things over. But not this time. Panic took over the guys. And it was probably for the best, like a self-preservation instinct. The boys' screams were heard by Lance, who came into their room. Turns out he had done his homework a long time ago. After telling his classmates about it, he accused them of being lazy and idle. Mash realized he had to take matters into his own hands. And he had a little trump card up his sleeve, which he could easily use. In case you haven't guessed yet, this trump card is Lance's pendant with a picture of his little sister, whom he idolizes. After revealing this miracle item, Mash immediately convinces Lance to help them on this quest. The first ingredient to get started is Mandaragra. She's a very loud little thing. I'd have to shut her up somehow, or she'd drive me crazy. But they didn't quite know how to do that. So Lance showed the idiots what to do. He took his wand, a magic wand, of course, and cast a single spell. With this spell he was able to calm the mandrake quickly enough. And so in an instant the mandrake went from a screaming creature to a silent ingredient for a potion. After Lance showed them how it all worked, he asked them to repeat the same thing just on their own ingredients. No matter how Phil tried to cast a spell on the mandrake, it did not work, it kept screaming. Then, as a true magician without magic, Mash took his wand and decided to show everyone who was in charge here. He pointed it at the mandrake, cast a spell, and something went wrong. Instead of shutting up, it started screaming even harder and more rapidly. Lance tried to help Phil with some advice. He told him to focus and direct the stream of mana to one point. Phil finally succeeded in calming the mandrake. Turns out it was one of the simplest spells. The boys were distracted. They made it, yeah, but how's Mash doing? Well, he's in trouble, and instead of calming the mandrake, he's done something unbelievable. It had grown several times over and had become unbearably loud. Now it was destroying not only the guy's eardrums, but everything around it. How on earth did Mash do that? We had to rectify the situation right away. Then the guy jumped up and slapped the creature, thus knocking it out. In fact, he had accomplished the task. The mandrake was now asleep, in the idea that he had achieved what was needed. Now it would be time to begin the preparation. First you should finely chop it, then pour it all into a saucepan, then fry it and add some spices. That's it, done. That doesn't sound too hard. Mash was first to the task. He did everything exactly as instructed, but instead of getting a potion, he got a brownie. Lance saw the difficulty and decided to show them the same thing, but this time at a slower pace. But even under Lance's watchful eye, Mash still managed to make a brownie. Before he continued to help the boys, Lance warned Mash that he had no intention of giving in to him. And he, too, had very good reasons for being the best of the Academy's best students. Mash accepted this information with understanding. Then, having agreed ashore that they were still rivals, the boys continued practicing their potion-making skills. At that time something strange was going on in the school corridor. The kids ran into some guy, and they reprimanded him not to push. After that, he clearly got very angry and beat up the students. It seems that a real war of clans is starting. A squad of talented students clearly wants to overthrow a squad of the strongest and bravest. The next day, the boys were taken out into the woods. There they met that aggressive apprentice. He turned out to be Barrett. He wanted to be the first not only in the academy, but in principal always. He really didn't like it when girls paid attention not to him but to someone else. He hated pretty boys, he wanted to destroy them. He wanted to be the best-looking guy. Why didn't anyone love him? The boys' tantrum was stopped by the teacher. Today there will be a competition between the two dormitories, Adler and Land. They have to go into the woods and destroy as many scorpions as they can. For these they will get silver and bronze coins. For the weaker scorpions they will get bronze. And for the stronger ones, they get silver coins. Mash had already made a few enemies in his few months at the academy. One of the students attacked him. There were a lot of aggressive participants in this ordeal. In the woods, Mash met up with Dot. They saw one of the guys attacking a girl, then they helped her fight off her attacker. The classmate was very grateful to her rescuer, and he was beyond happy. It turns out that this girl had the power to make anyone fall in love with her. One rival she had neutralized. Now it was time to take on Mash. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't get the guy to fall in love with her. She shared that Silva, the same aggressive student who attacked Mash, has been stalking her for a very long time. After listening to the girl's experiences, Dot was ready for anything. Then he challenged Silva. A fight to the death began between the guys. Both were quite strong and aggressive. Who would win and who would remain in this forest forever? In this series you can learn about the clan, which has transformed from a faculty of the most brilliant and unlikely violent students. One of whom will go up against Dot and Mash. Will the boys be able to defeat him together or will he prove stronger? Either way, this means only one thing, that the clan of genius students will start a war, which will involve its mediators and Mash. The students of the academy face a daunting task. In this lesson they must defeat the magical scorpions in the woods. All things considered, this can be dealt with not only through magic, but also through physical strength. So it shouldn't be difficult for Mash to defeat a couple of scorpions and get silver coins. Except that the difficulty of the whole assignment is not these scorpions, strange as it may sound, but the other students who have decided that Mash is their enemy. As a reminder, some unexpected action is now taking place in the forest, namely, a duel between Dot and Silva has unfolded. Silva was in the winning position now. He was much stronger than Dot and outmatched him in every way. During the brief pause, the guy needed to think of something urgently. Because right now there was nothing his friends could do to help him. They had only to stand by and watch what was going on. In spite of his position, Dot was not worried about himself, but about the girl they had met in the forest. He had no idea that his thoughts were not his own, they were subject to her magic. Silva's arrogant attitude added fuel to the fire. He thought Dot was weak and wasn't afraid to speak his mind to his face. He wasn't afraid of anything, because he knew he would be stronger than everyone. He was unmatched by anyone he met on his path. Surprisingly, Silva decided to offer the boys a victory. But of course for a reason. To win, they must withstand 5 of his magical blows. If they can withstand it, he won't lay another finger on the girl. There will also be a silver coin at stake and it will go to whoever wins this equal fight. Dot agreed to Silva's terms. This was not normal, even the girl stood up for her subordinate boy. Only Silva can call this fight equal. Who will win? Ignore the cruel Silva. Like and subscribe, brave Mash. He's clearly in a winning position because he's going to throw punches. He's just going to cripple guys. No one's ever taken a couple of punches. And there would be as many as 5. Dot was ready for such an ordeal. Then Silva stunned him with new news. He said it wasn't just him, but his friend Mash, too. Dot didn't want to screw his friend, so he decided to take a double batch of punches, for Mash and for himself. This really amused Silva, and he sprang into action. The first blow was very powerful. Dot didn't expect such power. And that's only one of 10 he had to endure. Nevertheless, he was able to endure it and almost didn't fall off his feet. Silva seems to be a real tyrant and sadist. He enjoyed inflicting pain on other people. Despite the pain, Dot braced himself for the next blow. It was followed by a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, an eighth, a ninth. Usually all the people who experienced Silva's power gave up. But not. He was able to withstand. Despite the power of the blows he had to endure, he still stood his ground. This amazed Silva. The boy's resilience was sustained by the magic of the girl he had saved. He couldn't give up, at least for her sake. That was why he still hadn't broken down. Since Dot had been able to withstand all the blows, Silva had prepared for him the last 10th blow, and it would be unusual. It will be more powerful, like an iron fist. And even after such a crushing magic move, Dot was able to rise to his feet. Silva was just in shock. Dot decided to walk over to him, but on the way, his mind blurred and he fainted. When he came to, he ordered Mash to grab the girl and run away. In the meantime, he'd deal with this magical dude. Sylvia didn't like the boy's speech, so he punched him again. That's when the girl's false mask was revealed, revealing who she really was. She revealed that she had cast magic on the boy and joined Sylvia. They had been allies all along. That blew Dot away, at least mentally. The villains also made fun of him and his trust. He was beyond angry. Silva's laughter was silenced by Mash's brownie, which he threw into his mouth. Now he would show them what it was like to hurt his friends. He told Silva that he accepts his challenge and is willing to take all 10 punches. At this time, Mash's 3 friends were discussing him at the other end of the woods. They were worried about him because they didn't know where he was. Silva didn't yet realize who he was messing with, so he continued to insult the guys. Of course, after all, he thought he was invincible, powerful, strong. He thought he was someone who could humiliate, insult other people. Who could hurt others and still laugh at them. When Silva wanted to hit Dot again, Mash stepped in for him, but he couldn't hit his enemy. The guys started hitting Mash, one after another, over and over again. Suddenly something incredible happened. After a series of blows, Mash stopped the magic rock with one hand. It was time to get down to an even fight, no more patience. Mash sprang into action, he sidestepped several blows and almost got to Silva. Smashing every obstacle in his path, he reached his fist into his opponent's face. This pissed the guy off, and he showed off all his magical power. But even she was no match for Mash's physical strength. Now it was Silva who was the victim. For the first time in years, someone was able to bring the bully to his knees. Mash stepped back a little further and said that Silva should be able to take 10 punches, as he had originally suggested. That's when Bully realized he was in deep trouble. He couldn't take another punch, let alone 8 at once. Apparently luck was on his side today, because a big scorpion came running out of the woods toward them. Everyone was expecting a fierce battle, but Mash defeated the scorpion with one blow. The boy felt sorry for Silva and did not finish him off. To avoid the same fate, the girl decided to press pity. She already thought this tactic worked. But to Mash, both women and men are equal, so he punished her, too. After such a battle, when Mash met up with his friends, he got plenty of support. Dot stood on the sidelines, once again abandoned by everyone. But then Lemon came up and expressed her excitement to him. To say he was very pleased was to say nothing. Dot thanked Mash for his help. The other faculty saw Mash's progress and they really didn't like it. Perhaps a battle of the coins might begin soon. It was exactly from the other faculty that Silva was from, and it was only one of his students. And there were a bunch of others out there who were just as strong. Thanks to this lesson, Mash was able to get a few silver coins, which he then managed to exchange for 1 gold coin. These faculties, by the way, had been formed since the beginning, when the new students first arrived. One had to touch the unicorn's horn, which would read a student's powers, thoughts, and beliefs in order to select a more appropriate faculty for him. This ceremony was exciting. Everyone hoped for a particular faculty, and some were glad that their guesses matched. And some were surprised by the unicorn's decision, but no less happy. For many centuries the unicorn had never been wrong about where to direct his students, but when Mash approached he was in a stupor. When he tried to read his mind, all he saw were brownies and nothing else. He tried to match the brownie with the goodness of his heart and referred Mash to the Adler faculty. That's been the faculty he's been in ever since. In Liana, which is a different faculty, there are some of the most powerful mages who are most likely to make an appearance in the fight for the coins. You had to stay away from these guys, because they could even take the coins away. They were very cruel and punished Silva for his blunder. They were led by a magician who could turn anyone into a wooden puppet. And so to these dangerous people Mash accidentally got right into their lair. In this series you will see an aggressive confrontation between the two clans of Lon and Adler. Dangerous men can take possession of divine providence and destroy this world. Only Mash and his friends can stop them. But will he be able to stand up to the Academy's strongest mages with no magic at all? Will he be able to withstand all the blows from his enemies and stay on his feet? That's what we're about to find out. After completing the final test with the scorpions in the dark forest, Mash gets his first gold coin. Lance warns Mash that they are now in the middle of a real clan war at the Academy. One of the clans is very strong and you should never even get caught by them. Because they can just take away a guy's well-deserved awards. Well, time passed and the mouse completely forgot about the warning of his friend. He walked through the Academy, got lost, and accidentally wandered into the office where the very dangerous clan was located. The headquarters of the 7 magical fangs. When the guy went inside, he accidentally ripped the door open, as he had forgotten which way it opened. From the get-go, he saw a strange picture of the head member of the clan holding a doll and talking to it. This confused the boy and he admonished the ringleader. Abel immediately recognized the stranger as the same freshman who had managed to get the gold medal. Then he asked the usual question. What does Mash want to become a divine conductor and the best in this academy for? To which he received the same usual answer, the guy just wants to live in peace with his family. That's all great, of course. But Mash seems misguided. He's a little confused about the meaning of divine conduction. And then Abel explained to him that the best magicians are worthy of this title, sculptors who create creations out of energy in this life. It requires tremendous effort and talents, including magical ones. But he doesn't sense any magical energy in the boy, nor does he see any potential in him. Then Mash asks the ringleader a counter question. What does he need divine conduction for? To which he replied that he wanted to return the world to its original state, as it should be in its essence. All life in the world, the strongest have survived and devoured the weakest. This has always been the case, and civilization and human evolution evolved because of it. But what do we see now? Now it's all gone, and now the strong protect the weak, allowing them to exist on this earth. Although, in theory, they are not worthy of it. Because they couldn't go through the trials of life on their own. This is wrong. By nature, man is a wild animal. The weak are made to obey the strong. And those who cannot even do this must die. They are unworthy of existence in nature. Their role is to provide a comfortable environment for strong predators such as this clan. After listening to this insightful speech, Mash concluded that it seems Abel wants the same quiet life as he does. Since Mash got into this lair, he would need something to pay the more powerful wizards to get out of it alive and unharmed. Like the gold coin he'd managed to get at the trial not long ago. The boy did not like these terms and refused the offer. This made Abel very angry. After all, no one dares to cross him. So he revived one of his puppets and used magic to send it straight to Mash. But thanks to the guy's quick reaction time, he was able to track the moment. And with one of his tricks, he smashed the puppet to pieces. In doing so, he sort of defied Abel. Then he turned the lively jester upon him. He was larger and stronger than the last puppet. With his strength he was able to grasp the boy's hands and hold them still. This puppet was even able to snatch a gold coin from the guy and throw it to his boss. Then tossed the guy himself and threw him into the wall, with such power that dust rose everywhere. But Mashle's willpower could not be broken so easily. He rose to his feet and was not about to walk away. On his way to the clown, he accidentally stepped on one of Abel's puppets and nearly crushed his head. The puppet turned into one of the disciples, whom Mash simply could not leave in such distress. He picked him up and decided to take him to the infirmary to get him the help he needed. But as he left, he promised to come back, and not just come back, but to defeat Abel. Now this isn't just a harmless skirmish between two boys. This is a real war that will lead to the victory of one of them. When Mash left, Abel pondered his behavior in thought. Then he noticed an interesting thing. He looked closely at his scamp and saw that he was missing one button on his blouse. Then he decided to look at the coin he had stolen from Mash. He couldn't have been more surprised to find the very button of his own puppet in his hand instead of the coin. It turns out that during the time when the puppet took his gold coin from Mash and threw it to Abel, the guy reacted quickly and ripped one of her buttons off her blouse, which he spat at the flying coin and knocked it down. Afterwards, he breathed air into his lungs with such force that he sucked the coin into his mouth. The guy Mash picked up turned out to be Silva, the same bully who had threatened him and had a whole duel in the woods. He woke up in the infirmary and was surprised by his rescue. He didn't have to be surprised for long, because right away he saw a guy practicing and seemed to get the hang of it. Meanwhile, in the Adler dormitory, in room 302, there were two rivals opposite each other, Lance and Dot. They were clearly unhappy with each other. But Finn, whose room they had invaded, seemed the most annoyed. Dot couldn't stand the kind of wussy hotties that Lance was. Lance, meanwhile, hated guys as aggressive and hot-tempered as Dot. So it was that the tension in the room hung over their debates, and it was building by the minute. At the most critical moment, when a fight was unavoidable, Mash burst into the room and stopped what was going on. Surprisingly, even though Dot was acting like a typical bully, he didn't come to his friend's house empty-handed. He brought his favorite herbal tea. It would be time to make a plan on how the newly formed team of friends to earn more coins. Suddenly, emotional Lemon runs through the open door. She calls the boys over to show them the magical scales she saw at the academy. These scales show in real time how many coins the dormitory students have collected. Right now, the Lawn clan is in the lead by a very wide margin. Adler, on the other hand, has only one coin, earned by Mash. This sinister clan cannot be allowed to win so that one of them can acquire divine providence. Then disaster would ensue. Everyone who could stop the members of this clan is either no longer in the academy or is busy doing something else. It turns out that the only people who can stop the tragedy are the team of young friends. Because Mash hit a teacher in one of his outbursts of justice, he was punished with several days of cleaning the owl house. Lance came to his friend's rescue, just in case. Just in case members of the Lawn clan found out about Mashle's whereabouts and wanted to take the gold coin from him. Their worries were well-founded, and soon two of the Lawn clan came to the boys' owl house. They were aggressive and put up a real fight. In addition to protecting themselves and fighting off the magical blows of their opponents, they also had to take care of the safety of owls that could be hit by a magical wave. Despite the strongest moves that the opponents were trying to make, Lance easily repelled the blows. At the same time, another underwater battle was taking place. Between a shark, it was one of the clan members, and Mash. All battles were stopped by a certain unknown man in a cloak, on whom Lance's magic had no effect. Nor could he be struck by Mashle's powerful blow. This man was clearly stronger than the minions he had come for. He took them and disappeared. In this series, our heroes face the strongest wizards of the third Fong of the Lana clan. They are the strongest wizards of the whole academy, some of them are feared even by the teachers themselves. And now they realize that Mash and his friends are competing with them, so the opponents must be exterminated. Will our freshmen be able to defeat the mighty mages? Will they be able to take all of their mighty blows and fight back with dignity? We're about to find out. The masked stranger fought the dormitory magma lord himself. The stranger easily defeated him. While Mash was cooking, Lance was talking about the strongest lupus mages. They were the elite of Lana's clan. Against wizards at that level, you couldn't just go on the defensive and wait, you had to go on the offensive. Since Mash had already been at the Magic Academy for a month, he was given a robe. An agitated Lemon burst into the room, screaming that Tom was seriously hurt. The boys went to the infirmary to see the boy. The captain was very emaciated, and his appearance was very sickly. He had no recollection of what had happened, only a dream about being locked in a box. He could feel everything, but he couldn't say a word. Now the captain had no strength at all, not even magical strength, as if it had been sucked out. There were dozens of other casualties with the same symptoms in the infirmary. Lemon gave Mash a talisman to protect him from bad situations. At night at the academy, when everyone was asleep, Lance and Mash wandered the dark corridors. Finn and Dot also followed them. As a group, they walked down the hallway and saw Lemon there. It was very strange. Suddenly the girl began to move unnaturally, like a puppet. Fortunately, she did not notice the boys and continued walking. She was clearly under some sort of curse. The group rushed after her, but came to a dead end. Strange noises were heard from the darkness, like the creaking of wood. Lance used his powers and a huge door appeared on the floor. It seemed to be closed, then Dot tried to open it by force. With magic it could not be done. After that, Mash decided to make an attempt to open the door. Since magic wasn't working here, it was time to resort to physical force. Using the principle of leverage, he managed to open the door. Time to go into the dark, scary corridor. It turns out that underneath the academy is some kind of dungeon. This place was clearly chosen for a reason. At the end of the tunnel Dot saw a light. When they reached it, the boys entered a huge hall that looked like a battle arena. Just then a wizard appeared out of nowhere and explained that this was indeed an ancient dueling arena. The wizard was there by order of the third Fong. He acts as a kind of guard. Any intruders who trespass without asking must be destroyed by him. Naturally, the boys would fight for coins. It was Dot who went up against the guy. He was pissed off by all kinds of handsome guys that girls were crazy about. It was the only reason he had to beat the wizard. The guard underestimated the guy's capabilities and summoned vines from his wand. Meanwhile at the Bureau of Magic, the professor was summoned to the headmaster's office. He told them that 6 of the most dangerous criminals had recently escaped from prison. And our battle begins. Dot was the first to strike. The guard was aware that Dot had once defeated Silva. But this guard was much stronger than that apprentice. Dot threw firebombs at him. They surrounded the young man like mines. The explosive power of this magic is immense. But it still needs to be stepped on for it to work. In the arena, 2 powerful mages collided. Dot's fire couldn't overpower the stranger's vines and he grabbed the guy, knocking his wand out of him. He shackled the red-haired man in vines, the spikes of which prevented him from even moving. When the guard was about to destroy it, he made the fatal mistake of falling into the guy's explosive trap. They weren't actually mines, but sentry bombs. With his cunning, Dot managed to defeat the pretty boy. That's when the floor beneath the guys turned into quicksand and sucked them in. After riding through the floor, Lance found himself alone in a room with a dude in dark glasses, the third Fong of Magic Lupus Worth Muddle. Dot and Finn, on the other hand, fell to the floor of a very different room, where they were met by 2 mages, a girl with pink hair and a guy with a funny hat, Love and Milo. They seemed to have been deliberately separated, to destroy them one by one. Mash was in the other room, and he fell into a room where that masked stranger, Abyss Razor, was waiting for him. He somehow found out about Mash's inability to use magic. Abyss confessed that he didn't know how to use magic either. Now, to save Lemon, the friends must defeat the strongest mages.
This series features legendary battles between the strongest mages. Also, Mash will be opposed by a member of the Lupus clan. Will the boy be able to use physical strength to suppress the magical power of one of Lord Abel's henchmen? Let's find out right now. Lance was standing across from Worth Medal, one of the most powerful mages who had wiped out more than a dozen students at the academy. The boy attempted to quickly deal with his rival by summoning a spell, but surprisingly, it didn't work on Worth. Immediately from behind, a slew of mage spears appeared and attacked Lance. He tried to use the gravity spell again, but it didn't work again. Apparently, his opponent had earth magic and easily turned into a mass of mud. In order to destroy the mud illusion, one must destroy the one who controlled it, which is Worth. But that proved to be not so easy to do. Despite the fact that Lance was clearly losing to his opponent, Lance even praised him. He appreciated his abilities and offered to join their clan. Worth was confident that a man depends on his surroundings. If you're in the company of trash, you'll start to stink. Therefore, in order to pump up his abilities, Lance needed to join a strong guild. The Lupus clan has only the most capable apprentices. They have the best training, which only improves their powers. Of course, Lance didn't agree to this offer. He called the Lupus mages second rate and directed the gravitational flow directly at his opponent. Worth was able to soften his fall and was confident in his defense. But then the cobblestones that had been left over from Lance's last hit flew through the mud from Lance's last blow. Ever since he was a child, Worth had thought of himself as a better mage because he was born with 2 markings. He was different. No one could surpass him in strength or magic. Since middle school, he was trained in this academy and got into the best clan. He can't lose to a second-rate mage like Lance. He believed he was stronger and better than him. In the Lupus clan, mages are rewarded for their strength and are given a special potion made from the essence of other mages. This is the potion Worth drank to increase his power, and indeed his magical power increased many times over. With the help of the spell, he transformed into a huge mud monster. All magic has levels. There are basic, personal, and an advanced state magic. But awakening magic is something different. Not even all mages with 2 marks can afford it. It is the ultimate mastery. From birth, the boy's father had instilled in him that it was magic that determined one's worth in this world. Only capable magicians have the sense to exist on this earth. Gathering all his rage, power, and strength, he lunged at Lance and delivered the first blow. In all these words, Lance heard an insult to his friends. No one would ever dare insult his kindred, especially in his presence. He easily dodged the earth monster's blow and was ready to fight with even more commitment. Gathering his thoughts, he recreated the power of awakening. This is the most supreme magic that students of the academy can be capable of. With the help of magical gravitational poles, he bound the monster's limbs with chains that stretched it to its limits and tore it into small pieces. That was it. No more of Worth's helper. Even though Worth had tried to please his father from an early age, trying to be strong, to be brave, and to keep his magical skills up to date, his father did not appreciate his son's abilities. He belittled and insulted him, telling him that he was not worthy to be his creation. This hurt the boy deeply and lodged a great black resentment in his heart. If you look so closely, Lance and Worth are actually very similar. They had parents with the same point of view. Both of them had parents who only valued status in society. It didn't matter to them what kind of person really was. What mattered was how they were perceived by others. But the boys did not agree with this point of view. At this time, there was a fight going on in the other room between the 2 contenders, Mash and the Man in the Mask. Worthless mages, but the strongest men were fighting each other. Fists versus blade, which will be stronger. Despite Mash's speed, the stranger was even faster. A couple of deft moves allowed him to inflict dozens of slashing wounds on the guy's body. The stranger was confident that he was invincible. There was some truth in what he said. Mash didn't care about threats. The stranger grabbed Lemon, a prisoner. She was imprisoned in a special magical artifact that drew magical mana out of mages. A little longer and her magical powers would dry up. The mark disappear and she would be nothing. Mash couldn't give up that easily. He was ready to fight to the end, for his friend and for his other friends, for his family and for his peaceful, quiet life. The stranger accepted his challenge and was ready to give his all too. This battle would be legendary. The stranger was getting too fast. He was once again inflicting many wounds on Mash. One more and he was sure to lose. And then, in an instant, the sword blade of the masked man pierced Mash's belly. It was just a ruse by the lad. He grabbed the stranger's weapon with his muscles, thereby holding it close to him. After Mash's attack, Abyss's left eye turned red. It turned out to be the eye of the devil, capable of sealing magic. It was because of this ability that the boy became an outcast and an object of scorn from other mages. A huge number of people shunned Abyss and feared him. He wasn't even accepted, even by his own parents. But Mash couldn't understand how that felt because he grew up in a loving family. That made the boy a little jealous. Well, it's time to show all his abilities. Abyss summoned the magic of awakening. A huge glowing dome appeared over the guys, a kind of force field that you couldn't get out of. Mash wanted to take the guy's punch and hit him back, but his speed was no longer the same speed as before. It turns out that this field slows down everything within its confines and gives Mash's speed to Abyss. There's no chance for victory here. Victory will definitely go to the stranger. That's when Mash took all his strength, fist literally, and hit the ground. He broke the floor so as to limit the guy's maneuverability. Abyss wanted to pull back to assess the situation, but Mash wouldn't let him. He stopped him and punched him with his fist. This move knocked his opponent far into the wall, penetrating the magical field. With only his physical strength, Mash was able to defeat his opponent's magical moves. He defeated his opponent, but he too had enough reasons of his own not to be defeated and win. Well, even the strongest moves didn't work on the guy. He threw Abyss from side to side like a ball with different muscle groups. And then, he managed to put his opponent on his back with one last punch. Defeated, Abyss spoke out. As a kid, when he got that damn eye, his parents were shocked. Needless to say, the whole neighborhood wasn't thrilled about a kid like that. Because he was an affront to magic, they locked him up like a criminal. So he lived for many years until one night his own parents attempted to kill the child. That's when he realized that he shouldn't have been born into this world. After listening to the boy's story, Mash offered to be his friend. For his kindness, Abyss gave him a piece of advice. He better not go to Lord Abel. He's too powerful. Parting ways on a good note. Mash promised that his opinion of Abyss would never change his mind about Abyss. If he offered to be his friend, he would be his most faithful friend. In this series, you will see fierce battles of the strongest mages. You'll learn a lot about our main characters and who they are. And most importantly, you'll see if Mash can get to Abel and destroy the evil one. Enjoy watching. Lance defeats the third Fang with Muddle. Mash, on the other hand, was able to defeat the second Fang of Abyss. And now it's Finn and Dot's turn. In the meantime, while the guys were busy with their bouts, Rain Ames came down to the dungeon. The fourth Fang went off and left his partner, Love, against the guys. Turns out this girl is the fifth Fang of the Lupus clan. She was very nice, but she was embarrassing the boys. Her first question was if the guys liked her. Dot knew right away that this girl was trying to manipulate no other way. Well, no matter how much he resisted his nature, he wasn't very good at it. That's because girls like her were his type. But alas, he already had a bride, to be named Lemon, his true love. So he couldn't trade her for anyone else. This insulted the girl and even offended her. In revenge for this, she decided to kill the boys. Immediately, she summoned her magic. Dot summoned his in opposition. Love took the position that all girls are cute and should be loved and pampered. And men don't give them the warmth they need. So it's disrespectful to the female sex. All men should pay with their lives. That's what got my friends. And so she reiterated her question about whether guys liked her. And again, Dot refused her. For such disrespect, she struck him with her magic. The magic beam had such power that it knocked the boy back far enough. It turned out that this was the kind of look she'd been taught by her father. Despite the hard blow, Dot was able to get up and attack back. Turns out the boy wasn't as predictable as Love had assumed. He exploded his fire projectiles around her, which created a smoke screen that restricted visibility. Taking advantage of the moment, the guy wanted to take the staff away from the girl because he realized that was what she was using to conjure. But, as might be expected, he did not succeed in doing so. Love once again flung it away from her with great power. While she knocked the boy out, the girl decided to tell them about her mate and partner, the fourth Fang. Turns out he has this ability to turn people into stone. And I think he's already found his next target. I don't think it takes too long to think that that target is our protagonist Mash. But before he can use a spell, he must first accumulate mana. This takes some time, and now Dot has literally 30 minutes to overpower Love and save his friend. After her monologue, the girl once again unleashed her most powerful magic on the guy to finish him off. It is impossible to get out of this magical vortex. Dot was already on his last bit of strength. He was barely hanging on. His whole body was in immense pain and breathing was very hard, so there was nothing he could do. After a while, the pain worsened and he passed out. While he was passed out, he had a dream. He dreamt about his past when he was just a kid. Sometimes the boys caught him and tried to take away his new things. That's when his brother would come to his aid. His beloved little sister came to his rescue. She taught her little brother to stand up for himself. He can't stand humiliation all the time, but the kid was a little different from her opinion. Then she told him that when he had a real friend, he would be willing to do anything for him. Dot hadn't had any friends before. He knew that such a friend could only come along once in a lifetime and certainly not to be lost. After that, his head was filled with memories of all his enemies who had said nasty things to him. And so he almost gave up. But then he remembered his friend, the same one he'd been looking for all his life. He remembered Mash. And so, while the magic beam was destroying Dot, Love decided to defeat his friend Finn. But at the very last moment, out of the blue, everyone in the room, Dot destroyed the magic beam. There's no way he's giving up if his friends are being bullied. His magic changed. It became even stronger. Despite the fact that he could barely stand on his feet, he was on full alert. Love once again decided to strike him with her magic, but met with unexpected resistance. She didn't understand how such a thing was possible. But then, through the smoke from the explosion, she saw a magical mark on the guy's forehead, a mark in the shape of a cross. This mark appeared very rarely in children with special magic abilities. Such mages are true demons, some of the strongest born into this world. The magic of such people reaches the limit of power under strong emotions. And now, one of the strongest emotions possessed the boy. He summoned magic and sent hundreds of fireballs directly toward Love. He had only decided to scare her by purposely sidestepping his target. Not only was he the strongest mage, but he was also a gentleman. That's why he wasn't going to hit the girls. The scare tactic worked. The girl was terrified and very grateful to the guy for keeping her alive. Finn didn't know his friend was that strong. To him, it was a revelation. But then suddenly, a huge stone head appeared from behind Finn and almost ate him. Dot managed to run up to it and stop the stone jaw. It was the return of the fourth Fang, who was very disappointed in his friend. How could she not kill a couple of inexperienced mages? He genuinely thought the guys were weak creatures who could be defeated very easily. Immediately from the void, he summoned several stone hands that headed towards the guys. What chances did they have against such a strong mage? And were there any chances at all? And so when the paws almost reached their target, the fourth Fang was blown away by the blow of a flying sword. The magic of the fourth Fang was simply dispelled. The friend's savior was Rain Ames. The fourth Fang tried to justify himself to the most powerful mage. He distracted him and wanted to dissect him with his stone head, but Rain shattered it with his sword. The divine ghost was very angry that his time was being wasted by all sorts of bugs out there. With one swing, he sent hundreds of his balls of magic at the fourth Fang, which struck the target. It was a level of magic none of the boys had ever seen before. The fourth Fang told him that he simply had no choice. He couldn't disobey his commander because then they would have turned him into a statue. That excuse didn't work, and he was hit hard by the mage. Rain was of the opinion that in this world, it's not words that are valued, but the actions that people resort to. So he punished the younger mage. He was convinced that people like the fourth Fang understood only the language of pain. So now he would teach him a lesson. It turned out that this supreme mage was Finn's brother. The task of the divine ghost was to find and locate the infiltrators in the academy. Walking down the corridor, he met Mash. He sensed such energy from him that he almost thought the guy was one of the traitors. With the help of a magic spider, he decided to measure the guy's power level to see what he was. When Rain threw a sword at Mash, he simply stopped it with his physical strength, which stunned the wizard. This episode features epic battles between the Academy's strongest mages. Mash will finally reach Abel and fight him. But will he succeed in defeating the Puppet King or become his new henchman? That's what we're about to find out. Mash arrived at Abel's hideout. The villain was very surprised that the boy was able to get to him. After all, he had posted enough guards who should have stopped the wizard, but nevertheless he stood there now. Who is Mash that he could even resist the magic of divine conduction? For a second, the guy thought he'd already been exposed and that Abel knew about his lack of magic, but it seems to have blown over. Since Mash is equal in power to Abel, he must realize that since they're the strongest, those below them are worse. They can't give them anything. They can only take something from the strongest. Abel was convinced that the strongest should not walk under the weakest. It should be the other way around. So those who don't have magic should be destroyed as if they were unnecessary things. The mage felt that simply isolating them from society was too lenient. It was necessary to change the system entirely. Listening to Abel's speech, Mash plunged into childhood memories. As a baby, he was very talented. Even though his father had magic and Mash didn't, he still loved him very much. And he always did everything he could for his only son, even if not his own. So Mash was against such violent ideas. There was no way he would allow the destruction of the weak and those who protected them, since he had been through it himself and knew how important support from the outside was. Abel realized for himself that Mash was too stupid for his ideas. Consequently, he too was an incomplete mage, so he too must be destroyed. The beginning of the battle between Mash and Abel was accidentally caught by love. The wizard unleashed dangerous dolls with acid inside that, corrodes everything. The boy quickly got his bearings, grabbed the head from one of the puppets, and threw it at the others like a bowling ball. That way, he took out all his opponents with a single strike. Mash wasn't so dumb after all. He understood Abel's logic. From what he said, if Mash could defeat the wizard, then Abel was the incomplete wizard. Let's not forget Mash's true purpose, why he came to this wizard in the first place, and that is to save Lemon, whom he has captured and is now sucking the mana out of. Abel once again attempted to destroy Mash with his puppet. Well, this time the attempt failed. The guy made his own terms. If he could defeat Abel, he would tell him where he's keeping Lemon. Here, Abel used a slightly different magic. He took over control of Mash and started beating him with his own fists. Well, that would have been too boring. So Abel grabbed Finn and turned him into a puppet, which he then turned on Mash. Now, Abel began to lay down the terms. The rules of this duel were that Mash was not allowed to touch the doll. If he laid a finger on the puppet, the mage would immediately tear his friend to pieces. Not the real Finn pounced on his friend and started throwing a lot of punches that Mash didn't block. After a few punches, the puppet's weapon simply shattered. Mash guessed that Abel was controlling his puppets with magic threads. So he took his gold coin and threw it with such force that it sliced through the threads controlling Finn, thereby freeing him from Abel's magic. After such insolence, Abel binds Mash with his magic threads, which no one could resist. But not this time. Mash was so strong that he broke several of his opponent's fingers. And then he broke free from his grasp and landed a knee strike. When Abel was already in the air from such a powerful blow, he used marionettification. With this spell, he was able to begin turning Mash into a puppet. The mage was reluctant to use this spell until last, but Mash forced him to. And so, a few moments later, the boy was transformed into a wooden puppet under Abel's control. When the magician was about to take his gold coin from the boy, to his surprise, the boy pulled out a cream cake from the inside pocket of his jacket. It turned out to be nothing more than a distraction. The boy had only been in the puppet incarnation for a few seconds. Abel couldn't figure out how the boy had managed to break his spell. After all, the spell blocked the ability to move any muscles at all. It even jammed the consciousness and subjugated the victim to the master. Could it be a spinal reflex? An example of a spinal reflex is when we instinctively pull our hand away from something very hot. It's a special mechanism to protect the body from external threats. Mash was able to use this reflex to resist the wizard's magic. This time, Abel used his strongest spell, intending to destroy his opponent. He recreated a huge puppet called Moriones, a spider-like creature with multiple heads capable of turning anyone within 100 meters into a puppet. It could use magical threads that were invisible to the naked eye. If these threads touched a living being, they would turn into a puppet. However, Mash easily defeated this enormous puppet. When Abel cast his spell, Mash bent down as low as he could. When the threads were as close to his body as possible, he grabbed them all and tore them. Abel used the last of his doll's strength, but Mash easily suppressed them. The boy was already behind his opponent, grabbed him, and threw him to the ground. In the past, Abel had a kind and gentle mother who came from an aristocratic background but cared deeply for everyone, including the poorest peasants. She taught him empathy and reminded him that they were fortunate to be born into privilege. However, she was tragically murdered one day while distributing food to the poor. The murderer wanted to take all the food for himself and heartlessly killed her. Since then, Abel developed a deep hatred for the weak, the poor, and the unfortunate. He sincerely believed that they were all cruel, greedy, and disgusting individuals. He formed a team of mages who shared his anger and hatred towards the world. Abel lost to Mash and had to reveal where Lehman was being kept. As a gesture of respect for the winner, he promised to release all the puppets he had created. With a spell, Mash freed Lemon and Finn regained consciousness. They managed to defeat evil and defend their beliefs. As a result of their ordeal, they obtained many coins. The friends were grateful to Mash for his bravery in saving them. Dot joined them, and they were all together, except for Lance, who was in the school hallway where he encountered divine conduction. When Rain checked on him, they discovered that Lance was too strong for the academy. He seemed to have found an infiltrator and transformed himself into a completely different person. He was a member of an underground organization that practiced dark magic. Now it was up to Rain to fight him. In this episode, you'll see one of the strongest magicians against Mash and his friends. Their battle will be fierce and very dangerous. There's no telling if everyone will survive the battle and whether Mash will be able to withstand the blows of fate. Because in this episode, Mash's secret will be revealed. Abel has given Abyss permission to use his magic eye for good. He remembered this act of kindness and had a duty to warn his friend of such a threat. He faced in the hallway. That same evening at Mash's house. At the table, his father and the very evil one were sitting and talking to his father and the evil policeman. Dad was very worried about his son and that others might find out that Mash couldn't use magic. And to the policeman, this prospect doesn't bode well either. And let me remind you that this story is about how Mash is an ordinary man in our world, but extraordinary in the magical world because he has no magic. Goes to a magical academy trying to become a top student, a divine conduct. And so our friends celebrate the victory over the Lupus clan. But Mash interrupted this celebration because he had to go to the bathroom. Thanks to their friends, all the students who had been turned into puppets are now back to being normal people, which is a relief. Instead of Mesh, the guys were approached by Zell, the same magician who defeated Abyss in the corridor with the help of his ally. With a wave of his hand, he swept his friends out of his way. This made an already fiery Dot very angry. Zell approached Abel to ask him about his defeat, realizing that Abel had indeed lost to some weaker magicians. Zell humiliated and insulted him in public. Immediately, he took control of the mag's hands with some kind of pink flame. Abel couldn't help it, and his hands closed around his own neck. He had already done his part, pulled out some info, but that's all. He's more than that. So now he can be disposed of. That's exactly how Cell managed his men. At the most critical moment, Mash appeared in the doorway with a tray of cream cakes. Mash appeared. It just so happened that a nasty fly had landed on the guy's nose, and he sneezed so hard that all his cakes flew right into the villain's face. Such insolence even made Cell let go of Abel. Mash tried to remedy the situation by apologizing, but it seems to have made things worse. And then Cell suddenly got a headache. He got a resonance, which means only one thing. He's got the man he's been looking for years. But the first thing he has to do is finish what he started and kill his former assistant. He recreated his violet fire around his former subject and lifted him into the air. And now he almost killed Abel by pointing the black rock at him. Not even Mash was able to get there in time. It all happened too fast. The only one who was able to react was Abyss. He shielded Abel, taking the blow for himself. It was critical damage. Unfortunately for him, he won't be able to fulfill his promise and just sit peacefully with Mash and eat his cake. Zul was very surprised that he was hitting full force. But Abyss was still alive. And that's because Mash threw a rock at him while he was using his power, knocking him out of focus and reduced the damage of the blow. The villain began insulting the wounded Abyss, pushing on the sore. This was where Mash couldn't contain himself any longer. He got angry. He stomped his foot and broke the floor, tossed one of the cobblestones and pointed it right at Zell. It didn't do the rest of the work because the mage simply intercepted the stone with one hand. Instead of scaring his opponent, Mash only made him more afraid now. Zell intended to kill not only Abel, but also Mash to boot. That didn't scare the boy. He didn't have time to be scared. He had to get Mr. Mask to the infirmary first before he could deal with his other problems. Because of Abyss bleeding didn't last long, just half an hour, and in that half hour, Mash to defeat the enemy. Just then, Cell recreated several purple funnels from which the stone tentacles were directed at Mash. The guy stood up too and fought back and fought off the magic. Then the enemy struck even harder, which Mash couldn't fight back. This amused Zell greatly. At this point, it was clear to everyone that Mash could not defeat this opponent. Their abilities are on completely different levels. Abel thought again about his past and his mother, who told him that everything they had was theirs by fate. And if they hadn't, they could have been just like everyone else. That's why you can't be conceited. Cell was about to strike Abel again, but Mash covered him. You guys don't have a chance to beat such a tough opponent. Yes, indeed, for now, Mash can hold his ground and can fend off magic. But how much longer would he last? Zell began to put his full weight on his body. But even so, Mash wasn't giving up. Abyss was only getting worse. He remembered all the evil people that had come along the way, who didn't accept him, insulted him, and tried to banish him from society for his evil eye. And now the only one who accepted him for who he was Abel. He was very grateful to him. That's why he saved him. Meanwhile, Mash was getting injuries from Cell's magical strike, still standing on his feet and acting as a human shield. It was painful for the friends to watch their comrade fighting for them, but they could not do anything about it. There was nothing they could do to help. Dot was questioning what to do, to leave Lemon and Finn and go to Mash's aid or to stand aside and stay out of the way. When the boy was almost out of strength, he was protected by a huge puppet of Abel. With just a few blocks of stone, he managed to destroy the puppet. At least he thought so. In reality, it was just a distraction so Mash could strike afterwards. He asked the guy what kind of magic he had. Mash had nothing to say because he didn't have any. So Zell took out his magic reflecting mirror, which could reflect any magic directed in his direction. This is one of the most dangerous artifacts, because one's own weapon becomes against its master. The friends tried to talk Mash into backing down. The guy just went ahead and smashed the glass with his foot. Then the friends realized that all those times Mash had been defeating had never used magic. After the contact with Mash, Zell had another headache and a certain mark appeared on his arm. Around him appeared huge black hands that grabbed him and dragged him into the portal. So the boys had defeated their rival by forcing him to leave. Abel thanked his savior, thanked his rescuer, and promised to repay his act of kindness. The first to learn Mash's secret that he had no magic were his loyal friends. But he had confidence in them and knew they definitely wouldn't betray or tell anyone. But if anyone else found out, it would be one exception away from being the only exception. Mash would be in huge trouble, so he better keep his mouth shut. Well, it looks like the friends were already in trouble because one of the students woke up and heard, who overheard everything. He was determined to tell the teachers, professors, and the principal everything. What to do now?